Welcome to Dawn of the New Earth. My name is Morgue. I'm an ex-Christian revealing hidden information to help create a new world. And today we're exploring a banned Gnostic text known as the Sophia of Jesus Christ, where it reveals the gender of the divinity. And the reason why we're talking about this today is because we've been exploring the Sophia of Jesus Christ. And I was taking a look at what we were supposed to read today. And I was like, you know what? We need to revisit this topic because it's very important and it gets very complicated really fast. And I also want to make some corrections to the previous video in this series related to this, because there's some things that I need to correct and update based on what I said last time, because I want to make sure that this is understood correctly. And it's because for example, we'll have an entity named like Barbelo, who's the Great Mother, but she's also called the thrice greatest male as well. So which is she the Great Mother or is she a male? What is it? So we're going to be taking a look at the gender of divinity, and not only the gender of divinity as well, but the concept of unity and multiplicity, because we're going to see that what most people take is like a very simplistic story of, oh, this angel was related to this angel. And it's actually much more complex than that, because these different beings stand for different aspects of a united reality. Anyway, if that sounds complicated, don't worry, because we're going to unpack all this, and it is complicated. So, and on that note as well, if in the first 5 minutes or so you're like, what the heck are you talking about? Don't worry. I know it's going to sound weird at first, but it's because we're not used to thinking, and we live in a world where everything is clearly delineated and separated. We're going into the divine realms where different things unfold and bleed and blend into each other. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. It's going to be very interesting as we talk about the gender of divinity, of God, and what that really means for us as well. So we're going to get started. As always, I want to remind you that if you enjoy my work, become a member here on YouTube or Patreon. Hit the join button to see all the different perks you can get access to. You can get access to all our members only videos. We're having a members only video right after this called What Does the Soul Actually Do? Because we know the soul exists, but what's its purpose? What does it do? That's what we're doing. So you can become a member to be a part of that. And all of our members only videos, there's a new one every week. And I want to remind you as well that my latest book, Psychogenesis, is out. It's about self and universal transformation, how to actualize yourself, reach the highest levels of consciousness, and manifest your will into reality. That's what this book is about. Now, this is book number 5 in my series, but I just want to make it clear that you don't have to read them in order. You could actually start with this one if you wanted to. This one's very unique in the series, is that you could begin with this one if you'd like. If you do want to begin with book 1, that's Neogenesis, Dawn of the New Mind. Links to where you can get my books are in the description of this video. And you'll also find a link to my Spotify channel podcast there. So follow me on Spotify, because that is always helpful to spread this information around on new platforms. So let's begin. We are going to find out here today that when we are in the realm of the divine, or the pleroma, or the fullness, gender is extremely complex. And when we enter into this realm, it's like walking into a house of mirrors, or being broken up into an infinity of fractals. And we're going to see that things are different yet the same simultaneously. It's a bit like the concept of the Trinity, but much more complex than that. So we're going to get started right away. And the reason why I want to bring this up is because I think that it's important to discuss. But anyway, let's just get started, and then I'll explain as we move along. So this is the gospel, the last gospel, known as the Sophia of Jesus Christ. And this is a good case in point. Sophia is an eon, or an entity whose name means wisdom. But Sophia is also a concept, the concept of wisdom. So when we talk about the Sophia of Jesus Christ, there's a couple different things going on here. We're talking about the wisdom of Jesus Christ, or the being, the entity, the eon, the Sophia of Jesus Christ. So we have to understand that these eons, these entities as well, reflect different aspects of the mind, the different functions. Like, for example, Christ is the savior function, the redeemer function, if you want to think of it in those terms. What Christ is the function of the divine that allows us to have access to and understand our own inner divinity. That's what it means by like a redeemer or a savior function. Jesus isn't literally some being that's going to come down from the sky and wave a magic wand and vanish everyone up into heaven. Rather, it is a function that we have access to all the time. It's within us. That's why in the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says that the kingdom of heaven is within you and all around you. You have access to it all the time. You just have to look inside to be able to activate this function that's within you. We all have access to it. We can all access it. So, but let's just start this and unpack what it says here, because there's kind of a lot. So, the perfect Savior, or Jesus, said, and by the way, I read a little bit of this section last time, but there's some corrections that I want to make. When I was rereading this again today to prepare for today's topic, I want to make some corrections. So, Jesus, or the perfect Savior, said, I want you to know that he who appeared before the universe in infinity, self-grown, self-constructed Father, being full of shining light and ineffable in the beginning, when he decided to have his likeness become a great power, immediately the principle or beginning of that light appeared as immortal, androgynous man. And remember, androgynous means neither male nor female. So you have a immortal, neither male nor female man. So I'll, again, if that sounds contradictory, like I said, just go with it for a minute and you'll see what it means. So, that through that immortal androgynous man, they might attain their salvation and awaken from forgetfulness through the interpreter who was sent, who is with you until the end of the poverty of the robbers. So, like I just said, this is mentioning that savior function, that essentially through this immortal androgynous man, those can wake up from their forgetfulness to understand that enlightened power that we all are, and awaken from forgetfulness through the interpreter who was sent, who is with you until the end of the poverty of the robbers. The robbers are the archons, the rulers who ensnare humanity into forgetfulness and distraction of their true nature. And so these all stand for concepts. You can think of the eons as relating to the higher planes of mind that stand for things like wisdom, perception, memory, reason. And then the archons, in contrast, stand for matter and the unconscious mind, and have things to do with like lust and hate and anger and wrath, etc. There's a lot that I could say about that, but I'm going to try and just continue here because I want to stick to the topic. So, and his consort, this immortal androgynous man, his consort is the great Sophia. Now notice that he says great Sophia. Okay, just keep that in mind for a minute. Who from the first was destined in him for union by self-begotten Father from immortal man, who appeared as first and divinity and kingdom, for the Father who is called man, self-Father, revealed this. He was given great authority, and he ruled over the creation of poverty. He created gods and angels and archangels, myriads without number. And from that light, the tri-male spirit, which is that of Sophia, the triple male spirit, which is that of Sophia, his consort. From that, God originated divinity and kingdom. Therefore, he was called God of gods and King of kings. Okay, so we have, the consort of great Sophia is the immortal androgynous man. Now, the reason why I want to make a slight correction here is because I think in the last video, I said the consort of the great Sophia was Adam, Eye of Light. And this really doesn't matter. It's just I'm picky, and so I want to make the correction. If it doesn't really matter. But anyway, Adam, Eye of Light is related to the immortal androgynous man, but they're not exactly the same. They're different aspects of each other. So the great Sophia, the consort of the great Sophia, is the immortal androgynous man. And the reason why, again, I'm bringing this up is because we have to, there's like the immortal androgynous man is related to Adam, eye of light. But we're also going to see there's a relationship between Jesus Christ and Sophia as well. And you'll find that sometimes Jesus is, like in this, Jesus is described as the offspring of Sophia and the immortal androgynous man. Jesus is described as their child, but he's also described as coming from the ultimate reality as well, which is above the immortal man and Sophia. So he's both above and the offspring, which again sounds kind of confusing, but see, this goes hand in hand. As you can see in some elements, they're like, oh, the female who is thrice male, or Jesus or Christ, the Savior, who is the son of essentially the source, but also the child of Sophia and her consort. And the reason why that this is happening here is because in this realm, it's like walking into a hall of mirrors, because everything ultimately comes from a single source, the one, Tochen, the divine one source. Everything is an expression or emanation of the divine one source. So in this unfolding, you're going to have beings that are very similar to each other because they're reflections of that one, but are different expressions in nuanced ways, transformed in nuanced ways. And so that's why you can have Christ, for example, who is the one who directly emanates from the infinite eternal source, but you can also have Christ as a subsequent emanation from the union of Sophia and her consort. So you have both, but in different terms and different aspects. And we're going to see that when Christ is the emanation of Sophia and her consort, it really is about creating a particular expression of that savior function to be able to not emanate, but reveal itself in our world where we can understand it. So there are different aspects, different emanations. And so, okay, so for example, right, so the first man has his unique mind with reflecting and rationality, and all the attributes that exist are perfect and immortal in respect to imperishableness. They are indeed equal, but in respect to power, they're different, like the difference between father and son, and thought and the remainer. As I said earlier, among the things that were created, the monad is first. So essentially, that's what it's saying here, is that you have one thing, and then you have different expressions of that one thing that are the same, but also different. It's kind of like the concept of the Trinity, but a lot more complex. And so you'll see this as well. For example, let's take Sophia, for example. Sophia, we tend to think of Sophia, because we're used to thinking of characters as being this one individual being. But Sophia is actually a single being of light, and Sophia usually refers to the female aspect of that single being of light. So Sophia and her consort are a single being. And Sophia and her, like in the apocalypse of Adam goes, your mother Eve and I, was talking to his son Seth, your mother Eve and I were once a single immortal being, and the evil Archon, the Demiurgos, essentially separated us into two to try and limit our power. So anyway, in the divine realms here, Sophia and her consort are this single being, but they have like a female aspect and a male aspect. But not only that, there are different expressions. So, for example, there's the Great Sophia, Pistis Sophia, Heilig Sophia, and Sophia Zoe. And these are all different. The Great Sophia is like the Great Mother, the mother of the universe. Pistis Sophia is essentially a version of Sophia that gets kind of caught up in the material world and represents our soul. Heilig Sophia. Heilig is related to matter and has to do with like generating the Demiurgus. And then Sophia Zoe is sometimes considered Sophia's daughter, who is the essence of life, or the goddess of life. And once again, that might seem weird to us, but remember, these are all different expressions of the same being. And so we have all these different versions of this, you know, vast being that's like this funhouse mirror experience. And the reason, again, this doesn't really matter all that much, but it's important to me because I like to be clear. And as we go forward, hi, hello everyone. How are you? How are you doing? Question. Yes, the stream crashed. You should be able to be seeing and hearing me now, I believe. So I have a question. When the hell did that crash? How long ago? How long ago did that happen? Has it been, I don't know if it's been 5 minutes or 30 minutes. I have no clue. Five minutes? Can anyone tell me what the last thing I said was? Which is probably not easy because it's a complicated one. I have no idea. As we go forward. Oh God, was I not? Did I pretty much did the whole thing get? You were saying you want to be clear. Oh man, well I don't. They say that a lot though. Sophia, yeah, well the whole thing is about Sophia. You also put up your hands. Thank you. I don't know. A version of Sophia. Wow, I have no idea. All the different types of Sophia. I spoke about Sophia and the different iterations, like Heilig Sophia, Sophia Zoe, Pistis Sophia. Was that like 5 minutes? Okay, let me ask you this. Did you guys hear me talk about the part where... Did you guys hear me talk about the part where Christ is the androgynous son of Sophia? Did I? Probably not. I would guess you didn't hear me talk about that. You did? Just start from the beginning? I don't want to start from the beginning. You start from the beginning. No? Okay. Oh, hey, Jan. Oh, hi, Mark, too. Hi. Yell to bail the officials. Oh, my God. All right. Well, most of you are saying no. Some of you are saying yes. Yeah, honestly, I might have to get a new computer. My computer's been crashing lately, which is a little concerning. So I'm probably going to need to get a new computer pretty soon here, which is annoying. Okay. I was talking about the different forms of Sophia. Okay. I'm going to start from there and try and summarize quickly. Can I start with repeating all the aspects of Sophia? Yeah, sure. Let's do that. Okay. Let's do that. Okay. Let's get back on track here. All right. So the stream actually crashed. And so I have no idea really where I stopped and what you guys heard me say or not. So I'm going to do this for you guys, but I'm going to go a little faster and more concise because it's a very complicated thing, but let's just do it, okay? So I believe, all right, the main thing to understand here is that in this realm, there are different aspects of a single being. And when it comes to a being like Sophia, for example, there are different versions of Sophia. There's the Great Sophia, there's Pistis Sophia, there's Heilig Sophia, there's Sophia Zoe. And all of these are different expressions or aspects of Sophia. And this also has to do with gender. You're going to have different aspects of gender related in this realm as well. So in this realm, it's like basically like this. It's like you're going into a house of mirrors as a single being, and then everything gets projected across all the mirrors. Or it's like a single beam of light going through a prism, and it gets, reflected as, or diffracts into a multiplicity of colors. Okay, so that's essentially what's happening here. And so let's start. I'm saying, like, where the heck do I start? Where was I? So, okay, let's start from the part where Sophia, the Great Sophia, and her consort beget a child. All right. So Jesus says, I want you to know that first man is called begetter, self-perfected mind. He reflected with Great Sophia, his consort, and revealed his first begotten androgynous son. His male name is designated first begetter, son of God, and his female name, first begettress Sophia, mother of the universe. Some call her love. Now, first begotten is called Christ. Since he has authority from his father, he created a multitude of angels. All right, so a couple things I want to say here that are a little important, not super important, but kind of important. First, I want to make a possible correction to what I said last time. So if you'll notice, it said that that his male name is designated first begetter, his female name first begettress Sophia, mother of the universe. So last time I assigned this, I thought, oh, Sophia, so I assigned that to Sophia. So basically I said that first begettress Sophia was related to Sophia, and first begetter, son of God, was related to her consort. However, reading this again, I do not think that that is the case. I think that that's referring to the names or aspects of Christ, and that meaning that Christ is expressing an aspect of Sophia, because Christ is then called Sophia in this context. All right. If that sounds confusing, don't worry. It's a little bit confusing. It is. And so it says, because it says, okay, I want you to know that first man is called begetter, self-perfected mind. He reflected with Great Sophia, his consort, and revealed his first begotten androgynous son. So again, we have to remember that the consort and Sophia are like this single being, but different aspects of a single being that are reflected into each other. Now you'll notice it didn't say they went and screwed and out popped the baby. They said they reflected into each other and the son was revealed. That's a lot different. A reflection and a revelation. And you have this idea happen a lot in Gnosticism. For example, you have the idea of the father and the mother, where the father reflects into the mother and the son is revealed in that sense. Now, in those terms, though, we have to remember Gnosticism is very intelligent. So these beings represent functions of the mind. The father represents thought. The father represents thinking. The mother represents thought. And then when thinking reflects on its thought, then you have thought thinking about itself, which is the son. The son is thought thinking about itself. And so you have three concepts here. You have thinking, thought, and then thought thinking about itself, which is the son. And that's metacognition. So you can see these are an interplay of concepts. It's not, oh, someone slept with this angel and then this baby. No, this little angel baby started running around puking all up. No, that's not what we're talking about here. We're in a realm where we're using beings to represent aspects of the divine or functions of the mind. So like in that terms, it was thought, or rather thinking and then thought thinking about itself, metacognition, where you have this trinity there. Now we have something similar going on here, where we have the first man and his consort Sophia, who reflect into each other, that reveals the androgynous son. The androgynous son All right, am I live? Are you guys seeing me? Am I here? Yeah? Okay, I wasn't gone very long, right? I was gone like maybe a minute, right? I was watching it. Okay. I don't know what's going on with my computer. My live streaming software keeps crashing. I'm going to have to figure that out, but we're going to keep trucking on and getting through this. So I'm just going to continue from there. If it crashes again, just stick around. I'll boot it back up. You say no sound? No, there's sound, right? Yeah, there's sound. Okay. There is sound. Okay. All right. We're going to try this again. Anyway, long story short, you have Christ with these two names or two aspects: Son of God, first begetter, and first begettress Sophia, mother of the universe. Some call her love. Now, first begotten is called Christ, since he has authority from his father, etc., etc. Now, the reason why I'm just bringing all this up is because, first of all, to make a correction, because last time I said that it applied to the first man and Sophia. Reading it again, I don't think so. I think this applies to their child, the Savior, the Son. It seems that to be more likely the case. Now, and about that, first of all, it also might be wrong. That might not be true. Reading this, it's ambiguous, and also it really doesn't matter. So the reason why I'm pointing it out is just for a point of for completionist's sake, to let you know, and also because later on it will be important to understand how there's these different aspects of the divine that have male and female aspects and are different functions of each other, reflecting into one another. And honestly, as we go forward here, you're going to see more stuff like this. And like I said, it's a little ambiguous about who it applies to, right? Like, is Adam, Eye of Light related to the first man? And is the great Sophia different from the first begettress Sophia? Or are they different aspects, or are they the same, or different titles? It's a little confusing and not super clear. Now, if we wanted to, we could take a month and research this to death and pin it down. But here's the thing, it doesn't really matter. So we're not going to do that because there's really no point. The reason why, so when I approach topics like Gnosticism and just different topics related to like hidden knowledge and occultism, etc., what we're doing here is we're working with archetypes. We're working with symbols that represent archetypes, to be more accurate, and we're using these symbols to help us understand ourselves and our world better. Not to be like as accurate as possible. If we that would be more like a historical study of it, or a very like academic study of it, which can be important. But when it comes to stuff like this, it's like, look, it doesn't matter really, and it's going to be a waste of time to try and figure out who exactly had this particular name, when we could be doing important things that are more aptly geared towards understanding ourselves in the world. So basically what I mean is getting caught up in knowing exactly whose name meant what doesn't really matter. The main thing to take away from this is the fractal-like aspect of reality, where you have a single being that is expressed in a multiplicity of beings that have a female and a male aspect and an androgynous aspect. So you have this interplay of male, female, and androgyny all interacting together and all manifesting in different ways. Okay, that's the important thing to take away, rather than like, oh, who exactly is so-and-so the mother of so-and-so, or is it actually the son of so-and-so? Or are they, is Christ the consort of Sophia? Or is Christ the son of Sophia? Or is Christ Sophia? Probably all of the above, depending on which angle you're looking at it from. So we have a similar story in the story of Mary, where we see Mary the mother, Mary the sister, and Mary the consort of Jesus expressed in the story. So you have the three Marys that represent archetypally three aspects. They represent three different aspects of a singular archetype. This divine feminine archetype that can be expressed as the mother, the sister, or the consort. So we have a similar thing going on here. And so that's the important thing to take away and remember. And when we start to study Kabbalah and the Tree of Life, we're going to see something very similar as well. Because, for example, in the Tree of Life, you have the Great Mother and the Great Father, and you have these different feminine sephira and different masculine sephira. But the interesting thing about Kabbalah is that all of these entities are, or beings or worlds, or however you want to refer to them, are also androgynous, even if one is called the mother and one is called the father, because it's in terms of, just like in Gnosticism, Barbelo is the great mother, but she's also known as the thrice great male. Which one is it then? Well, it's both. And because all these energies are contained within one. And so, like, in terms of Kabbalah, which is similar to Gnosticism, but not exactly the same, there are definitely some differences, but their approach to this gendered aspect of divinity is in terms of function. So, for example, when one is giving or acting upon, it is considered male, and one is receiving or being acted upon, that is called female. But here's the thing, is that every single one of those powers or divinities both gives and receives. So, for example, the mother receives from the father. So from the perspective of the father, the mother would be female. But the mother then emanates and gives to another sephira. And then from the perspective of that particular sephira, then the mother would be male, because the mother is acting upon that one. So, long story short, it's all everything and nothing. And it doesn't really, the important part to remember is that not to get it confused with how we in our culture think of like sex and gender. When we're at this level of reality, we're just talking in terms of like polarization or energy fields, essentially, like force and action, or force and form, right? Not even thinking about male or female. It's really about force, form, logos, eros, different polarizations of energy. And I think that that's the best way to really understand it. The gendered concept that we have here today in our culture is not the same as what we understand it to be in terms of the divine. They're simply forces, which is why when I talk about reality in terms of its structure, I don't usually talk about it in terms of male or female or even androgyny, because it's just confusing, because it's not those things. However, when we start getting into stories where different archetypes or characters represent different forces, that's when they start getting expressed as, well, being male or female or androgynous, because now we're in a world where that is archetypally representing a certain function. But it's not the same all across the board. For example, in a lot of systems, you would think that order, right? Like ordering things, one would typically think would be associated with male. Like the logos, the divine logos, the word that orders and structures reality, usually that's thought of as male. However, in terms of Kabbalah and the Tree of Life, that's considered feminine. Why? Because the feminine receives into her womb, and in her womb, she orders and structures that energy into a creative force. So in terms of Kabbalah, that ordering and structuring force is actually feminine, where in many other systems, that ordering and structuring force is considered masculine. So if that sounds contradictory, it's not contradictory. It just sounds that way when you try to apply our human conception of gender on something that's not actually gendered. It's just a force. Ultimately, if we just said what it was, a structuring force, that's what it is. We don't have to say it's male. We don't have to say it's female. We don't have to say it's androgynous. It's just a force of structure and order. That's what it is. And that's how we can understand what things are. nominally in themselves. Now, when we get into the world of archetypal representation, that's when we start, assigning characters with certain attributes. They look a certain way. They might look like a great dragon or a spider or an angel of light. They might appear feminine or masculine or androgynous. Are they actually any of these things? No, but the dragon might represent power and destruction and fire, the force of transformation and change. The spider might represent construction and also perhaps spinning illusion. The angel might represent revelation and knowledge and wisdom and understanding. But they aren't actually these things. These are just the forms of the story that we're imposing upon them to understand things in an intuitive and archetypal way. And so we have to be very clear. There's different ways we can understand reality. We can understand it through logic and reason and accessing its form and just understanding it mathematically. That's what we do when we want to get to the form of reality. When we want to intuitively connect, like unconsciously or experientially with reality, now we're working in the world with archetypal symbols. And that's a lot different because we're using symbols. Symbols aren't the thing themselves. Symbols represent or stand for the thing themselves. So if we're accessing the form of reality, it's very straightforward because we're in the realm of things like mathematics, where 2 + 2 = 4, it doesn't equal 5, right? The 2 + 2 = 4 doesn't equal 5. There's no ambiguity about it. That's what it is. You can clearly understand that. But you go into the realm of archetypal symbolism, it's a lot messier, where you have these characters. Sometimes they're male, sometimes they're female, sometimes they're androgynous, sometimes they blend into each other, sometimes one character is another character, etc., etc., etc. Like, for example, again, in Gnosticism, Sophia literally means wisdom. Sophia is wisdom, and she's androgynous, but usually the feminine aspect is more highlighted. Now, in Kabbalah, wisdom is called Chokmah and is the great father. So in that system, the father is wisdom. And in Gnosticism, you have Sophia or even Barbelo as wisdom. So what I mean to say is, and which one is right? When it comes to archetypal symbolism, it's not really about what is right or what is wrong. It's about, because it's a story. If you go watch a Lord of the Rings, none of that happened. So it's not really like, is a certain thing right or wrong? It's in terms of the story, which is its own world with its own rules. The difference here is that these stories are representative of things that actually do exist, but because they're wearing different masks, different symbolism, they can switch and flow and bleed into each other. Anyway, I think the reason why that I really want to clarify this is because in future videos, like we're talking about alchemy, and in future videos, we're going to talk more about Kabbalah and Tree of Life. And we're going to talk about some of these more story form of understanding things. And I want to make it clear that this is different than understanding things in a logically structured, ordered way. It's about understanding things through story and metaphor. And I want to make that clear because it's very useful, but it can also be very problematic. That's when and we'll talk about some of that stuff as well. Because this is where you get, like the idea like, women should be silent and they're less than men or whatever, because you start interpreting things in a negative way in terms of a story, rather than realizing that these are forces that aren't actually gendered in the way that we think of them. That's why I like the term, I'd prefer the terms like logos and eros and, force and form, etc. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that's clear. This video has been crashing a lot. So I'm sorry if this one is a little more scattered, because I don't know where it crashed and where it didn't, what I already said and what I didn't say. But let's read a little more. I want to continue this just so you can get an idea of all this. So his disciples said to him, Lord, reveal to us about the one called man, that we may also know his glory exactly. And the perfect Savior says, whoever has ears to hear, let him hear. So whenever Jesus says that, it's like, hey, we're going to talk about some important stuff that you need a higher consciousness to understand. First begetter father is called Adam, eye of light, because he came from shining light, and his holy angels, who are ineffable and shadowless, ever rejoice with joy in their reflecting, which they receive from their father. So you have a new being now, Adam, eye of light, who seems to be different from the first immortal man. This seems to be a different character. And so, like, again, there's different aspects. So there's Sophia and Sophia Zoe. Sophia, represents wisdom and a creative aspect of reality. Who is Sophia Zoe? Sophia Zoe, though, is her daughter and is a goddess of life, the goddess of life, and is also Eve. So there's Sophia Zoe, who's also Eve, but not just any Eve. She's Eve's higher self, because later that Eve leaves an illusory version or a lower version of herself with Adam. And there are also different Adams as well. There's Adam, eye of light, and then there's the Adam that ends up being, in the material world. And we see this in Kabbalah as well. In Kabbalah, there's like 3 different Adams. And this is because, like, when we're looking at this stuff, this is not revealed religion. This is not exoteric religion. This is esoteric knowledge. So exoteric religion, revealed religion, like, that's the typical thing that you learn when you go to Sunday school. And it interprets these stories as being literally true. And because it interprets these stories as being literally true, it's when it says, oh, God created the earth in a week, they literally believe that God was created in a week. When you look at esoteric systems, it's not so concerned about having a consistent narrative. It's about getting across information that cannot be expressed through words, so has to be expressed through symbolism. And so that's why it can seem very confusing or very strange. Like, why do we have 3 Adams? Why do we have 5 different versions of Sophia? Why do we have, Jesus being the son of Sophia, or the daughter, or the consort of Sophia, or Sophia's father? Which is it? Well, it's because this isn't supposed to be like an easy bedtime story kind of deal. This is about transmitting esoteric knowledge through these symbols. Hopefully that makes sense. If it's confusing, I understand. It can be very confusing. Anyway, so there's now Adam, eye of light, which I think is a really cool name, by the way. I love that, Adam, eye of light. And by the way, there's an archon called Eye of Fire, and I think that that's so cool. We'll talk about this later too in another video. I love the different, like, light and dark reflections that exist. There's Adam, Eye of Fire, and then Adam, Eye of Light, and the archon who's the Eye of Fire, and it's just very cool. Because remember, in Gnosticism, they look at the archons as being totally evil, but I believe that that's incorrect. That's not what we should do. We should look at the archons as being the shadow aspect of ourselves that need integration, that are currently running wild and running amok and rule our lives from the background. But once we integrate them and bring them into consciousness, we can actually have them working in harmony with us. So we need our demons and angels essentially working together. And when we look really closely, we'll find that these demons are actually just the reflections of those angels. They're just the dark aspects of those angels. So those angels who are fighting the demons are actually fighting just the dark versions of themselves and not knowing it, when really they shouldn't be fighting or clashing. They should be integrating their powers to go beyond good and evil to beings of light and darkness combined together, that abraxian gnosis of transcendence, transcending dualities and reaching unity. Anyway, let's see. So Adam, eye of light, came from shining light with holy angels who are ineffable and ever rejoice with joy in their reflecting, which they receive from their Father. The whole kingdom of Son of Man, who is called Son of God, is full of ineffable and shadowless joy and unchanging jubilation. They rejoice over their imperishable glory, who has never been heard until now, nor has it ever been revealed in the eons that came afterward in their worlds. I came from self-begotten and first infinite light that I might reveal everything to you. So a lot of more begetting and reflecting, etc. And see, again, tell us clearly how they came down from the invisibilities, from the immortal to the world that dies. And the perfect Savior said, Son of Man consented with Sophia, his consort, and revealed a great androgynous light. His male name is designated Savior, begetter of all things. His female name is designated all-begettress Sophia. Some call her Pistis. Now we have Pistis Sophia. Is Pistis Sophia referring to Son of Man's consorts or the androgynous light? I think it's the androgynous light, but who really knows? Doesn't really matter. But what we know is that there is a reflection and unfoldment occurring where there are different functions and aspects being revealed. So here's an interesting thing that I want to point out. We talked a little bit about this last time, but I want to mention again, just for completion's sake, is that we have Sophia. So for those who are familiar with this story, what Sophia did was Sophia wanted to create a being or just a creation on her own. Because remember, it's this one entity. Everything is an emanation from the one, and everything that emanates from the one generates as male-female pairs. Because they're complete. They're androgynous, complete beings. So everything are androgynous, male-female syzygies of the one. Sophia is a particular aspect of one of these syzygies, one of these two forces. So Sophia is the female aspect of one of these forces, who is ultimately a part of the one. But what Sophia wants to do, Sophia wants to create on her own, without her male consort, and without the permission of the one. She doesn't want permission from the one. She doesn't want permission from the male consort. She just wants to create herself. And so what does she do? She creates, and from her creation, because that asymmetry was introduced where it wasn't balanced anymore, because there was no male aspect to it, right? There wasn't a male aspect to it. A kind of void was opened up where a male aspect filled that void, but in a very dualistic way, where you have Yaldabaoth. Now, again, technically, Yaldabaoth is described as androgynous, but Yaldabaoth exhibits a lot of what one would consider negative male attributes like dominance and control and, what one would you typically think of as toxic. So you have Yaldabaoth, who's generated, and then Yaldabaoth creates the material world. And, that's so the reason why I'm bringing this up is because typically, in the typical interpretation, this is looked at as a bad thing. It's looked at as like, oh, great, thanks for fucking things up, Sophia. I don't like this interpretation because to me, this is almost still blaming the woman, where, typally it's like, oh, Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, let's blame her. Where in Gnosticism, Eve is praised for eating knowledge. But however, on a level higher than that, it's still kind of like, oh, the feminine force was responsible for everything being fucked up, right? Like, oh, look what she did. Now the demiurge exists. Now this hellish place exists. But see, this is not how I look at it. See, these systems developed at a time where light and dark were looked at as being enemies of each other. So these stories, this consciousness developed around that. We now know that this is not how things should be, that these forces should not be enemies, but rather integrated into a higher unity. Okay? So when we apply that way of thinking to this story, Sophia is no longer someone who is, someone who screws up and creates a hellish world. Rather, she becomes a savior figure. Why? Because before the birth of the material world, the pleroma, the realm of divine light, is in a perfectly balanced state, which might sound really good, but think about this. That perfectly balanced state in Gnosticism is called the silence. And if you think about a perfectly balanced state, nothing will ever truly change. And this is in the Neogenian system, what we call the Genesis singularity, which is a state of total perfection, total balance, total harmony, which is great for a moment. But if you think about it, it would be hell if it extended forever. because it would just be the eternal silence. It would become hell. So essentially, Sophia is the voice that breaks the silence and creates the Big Bang, essentially, brings asymmetry into the world, which is what allows us to have the experience of multiplicity and diversity. So we're allowed to have we're now able to have now in the beginning, it can suck because things are extremely asymmetrical. People are hating each other, killing each other, etc. But as we evolve more and more and start to realize our divinity, we can create the kingdom of heaven on earth, which means we know what we are, yet we still exist in a realm where separation and diversity exists, so we can enjoy each other in a diverse world rather than everything being in a stuck, still, silent existence forever. So in this case, Sophia sort of becomes, instead of someone who screwed up, she's and this makes much more sense because this always never sat with me very well because Sophia is called wisdom. Well, if Sophia is so wise, why did she apparently do this mistake? It's not a mistake. She was the one whose voice, whose song broke the silence and allowed creation to unfold. And there's a lot of pain that comes with that, but ultimately we triumph over that, and then we're able to integrate these aspects within ourselves and have the kingdom of heaven within and all around us, as Christ says in the Gospel of Thomas. So another thing to look at here is that Sophia is very closely related to Lilith, where we can understand Lilith as being sort of a dark shadow side of Sophia, or the dark aspect of Sophia. I'll get into this in more detail in another video because there's a lot to unpack here, because technically it's not just Sophia, it's Sophia and Sophia Zoe and Norea. So, and that's another reason why I'm kind of introducing this today about like how different things are different aspects and different unfoldments of each other, because it starts to get even more complex, but it's important to understand how all these archetypes are like different masks of the same, these symbols are different masks of the same thing. So you're going to see Sophia, Sophia Zoe, Eve, and Norea be very closely related to Lilith and Lilith's daughter, Naamah. So we're going to have Lilith, who's very closely related to Sophia, Zoe, and Naamah, who's very closely related to Norea. Norea and Naamah are very similar. They're just, one is viewed from the light side, one is viewed from the dark side. And it's very cool to understand the unification of these archetypes. And I'll show you what I mean. Like, because what did Sophia do? Sophia went against the one, the source, without the permission of her male consort, and became the mother of the universe. What did Lilith do? Lilith disobeyed Yahweh, rejected her male counterpart, and became the mother of demons, queen of the night. And so we have like this day side and dark side version, which are very cool. And they each reflect like different aspects and different powers we can tap into, whether we want to tap into creative forces of wisdom or that rebellious spirit of defiance. When we understand how to work with both light side and dark side without condemning and understanding how to integrate, we can use those symbols to activate those very important powers, because they're different masks and different faces of the same thing. And this is critical to do right now, because everything has been, all these stories and systems were predicated on a world that was divided from light and dark, fighting against each other. And so that's why you have so much of these stories like conflicting, where, you know, some people will be like, oh, you know, these eons are great, but then you have people who are into like demons and devils. And so it's like, well, which is it? Is it angels that are good? Or is it actually, you know, Satan, who's the rebel, that's good? Or Lilith, she's a demon, but isn't she like a feminist icon? And, you know, what about this angelic way of thinking about life? Isn't it good to have like love and care and justice? But what about when justice gets out of hand and gets too constrictive and starts becoming tyranny? And so basically what I mean is we have to come to these archetypes with an understanding that light and dark are not opposed to each other, but are different perspectives that need to be harmonized and integrated. And why does that matter? Because this is all within us. This is all within us. We need to integrate these archetypes within us, or else our mind is going to be at war. These angels and demons live in us. And so as long as we have this story of angels and demons at war with one another, we're going to have our psyche at war with each other. And so we want to integrate these ideas to really step into our true power of unified beings that are beyond light and dark, that are higher than these ideas, that are fully integrated and actualized. Anyways, I think that's where we're going to stop today. That was not really what I was intending to talk about today, but this crashed so many times and was so annoying. I just kind of started talking and went with it. But I hope you got something out of that. I hope you did enjoy parts of that. Let me know if you need clarification in the comments. I know it was a little more haphazard than usual, and that is because this kept crashing, and hopefully I can get that fixed. But yeah, as always, tell me in the comments what you'd like to hear more of, what interests you. Definitely tell me what interests you, because that helps me know what video to create next. Anyway, I'm gonna give a big shout out to everyone who supports. Thank you guys so much, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, DB, Nusalina, Dallas, Digital, David, LaDonna, Grace, Kira, Val Thor, and everyone else. Thank you very much.